Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Strange Reality with Dave Emmons. And hope everybody's doing fine out there. And I guess as long as you don't talk politics, I was talking to my guest pre-show about running into an old buddy of mine, and it resulted into politics for some reason. I didn't take it there, but he did. But he got angry. He was gonna use force on me, but I'm afraid if he did, he would have lost. But that's beside the point. I'm not gonna talk that up. But that's that's crazy. We shouldn't be going like that. I got friends on both sides of the aisle, the Republican, Democrat. I got guys at the gym that are different, political persuasion than I am, and I get along with them good. And I think we should do that. We should go back 20 years how we used to talk. When I had a lot of different Republican and Democrat friends. I was a Democrat for a while and I was a Republican, so I switched back and forth too. So it doesn't make any sense. I think after that little brief thing I had today, I thought to myself, I'm just going to say small talk and walk away anymore. But yeah, it's sad that we got to that point where there's so much violence and there's so much anger and in your face stuff. And I tried to beg this guy back. He was an old friend. He started walking away, and I said, Jim, now settle down, stop this stuff, But it doesn't do any good. Once people get that angry, that it's you can't stop them. So, and also we share this stuff on the internet too, and people talk politics on the internet, and a lot of disinformation and misinformation. We should hear it directly, from the sources, and which is hard to do anymore. I know with the internet, but that's why I have these shows, and I'm hearing it directly from the sources, from my guests who have investigations, have experiences, and they've written books and they've been involved in different projects, and they're educated in this manner of investigation a lot of times. And I have a guest tonight on the Strange Reality. His name is Tim Moon, and he's actually a school teacher, and he's got a book, and we'll talk about that pretty soon. Let me see if I can get enough light on this subject. Yeah, I got to get some more light. I know it's blinding a little bit, but I got to do some reading here. Tim is a husband of one, a father of four, and a grandfather of two. He is also a long-time middle school and high school teacher who enjoys occasionally sharing his lifelong fascination with the mysterious cryptid monsters. His students got a kick out of the fact that their history teacher believes in some of these beasts. And I wonder if he's getting much grief on that. We'll talk about that from the kids. Tim and his wife live in Austin, Texas. He is a longtime educator and administrator with a passion for subjects related to history, philosophy, politics, theology, and cryptozoology. He also loves basketball. Tomato Fields is his novel that he wrote, and he's going to do some revamping of it. So he'll tell you about that. We'll hold up the book and everything, but he's going to do some more work on it and get it back out there. And he hopes to do a series on this book. At its heart, Tomato Fields is a celebration of mystery, a scary, tragic, and occasionally gory celebration, but a celebration nonetheless. What if the materialistic pridefulness that haunts our age could be at least briefly remedied by such a mystery? Mystery, ironically, introduced by a monster. And I imagine monsters can teach some people today to tone down their political rhetoric. Tim has also hidden a personal monster for most of his life, the monster of alcoholism. Maybe we'll talk about that. Trapped in a prideful insulation, this monster eventually drove Tim to the end of himself, forcing him to trust a transcendent voice within, which led to a mysterious and miraculous release from a monster whose grip had seemed so strong. This book has been 10 years in the writing, and but prior to the recovery 5 years ago, its completion would have been impossible. So I guess we learn from our experiences, and we also can move on in a positive manner. The monstrous, I guess, preoccupation with alcohol would have continually derailed and blinded such an effort. Tomato Fields is thus a product of the very mysterious, and celebrates delivered at the hands of a monster. Mystery gives breath to life. It is the hope that the book will provide a small breath of fresh mystery for you in a surprising way. And Tim Moon, what are you doing now? I know you're revamping your book. You want to hold your book up now, and we can talk
Sure.
about you revamping it. Uh,
Yeah,
there is
there it
Tomato
is.
Field,
Yeah.
and that's the back of a Bigfoot, right?
Yeah. And I'm just making I'm just trying to do a little bit better on the cover and do some slight edits inside. You always find stuff you wish you'd have seen. So I'm going and having it re-edited, and then I'll have it put back up on multiple platforms and not just on Amazon. Prior to that, it was just Amazon.
Okay. You said
So
you said your kids that you teach give you some I guess some guff about all this belief
they
and
don't do too much guff. They ask me questions,
they
and
ask.
I answer them. I never go looking for it, but if they ask me questions, I'll do my best to answer it, and then I leave it there
Yeah,
because some people get a little nervous if you talk too much about it. So I just don't. But the kids get a kick out of it, I think.
yeah,
And
yeah. I think a lot of religions have different beliefs, and they some of them don't believe in this type of
yeah,
they would call them demons or devils, but they're really not that. They're just they're animals or cryptids and that we don't know about. Is that right, Tim?
well, I don't know what they are. I think if they were just animals, they'd be in the zoo. So there's something else going on there. And I can't tell yet exactly what it is. And I go between the paranormal and the which I don't think is really paranormal. I think it's just a word we use for what we don't understand. And also the possible connection to extraterrestrial, the possible connection to ancient human history. There's a lot of things that I think through, and I haven't come down 100% on any way. But my guess is, if I had to put money on it, it's that they're not from here. They're from somewhere else, and they were put here for some reason, and and they have abilities that we just don't have. Humans don't at least know they have some of these, abilities that they can appear and disappear if they can, in fact, do that. There's certainly some evidence for that, or blur and blend into the trees. There's certainly some evidence for that. And the fact that we don't have one in a cage tells you something.
Right.
Uh, they're smarter than us, or they're able to evade us in ways that we're not able to address. So I don't have the full answer. To me, it's a mystery. And I think when we know more about where we are in this universe and what role we really play in it and how big and amazing it is and how much life and diversity there is in it, um, we when we understand better our place in that, I think we'll understand this better.
Yeah. Tim, could you tell us? You mentioned your battle with alcohol, and I know a lot of people have had battles with these types of addictions. Now that took you from your alcohol addiction, and it brought you out after 5 years, and you got to thinking differently, and then you called it a monster, and then your book is called, the Tomato Field Monster. How did
Yeah.
it all hook together? Could you explain all that together?
Yes. The timing is. I started writing the book when I was having the troubles with the alcohol, and I just would toy with it and play with it and do little things here and there, but I never could focus because I was so distracted by the uh, the compulsion that alcohol. I mean, it's hard enough to have a job and
Yeah,
also to write books and do other things.
right.
And so I, but eventually I kind of came to the end of myself and realized I had a problem. I didn't want to admit I had a problem. I thought I had this, and that I just needed to change the circumstances somehow, and the consequences would go away. And I just kept lying to myself and deluding myself. And I finally gave up and admitted I had a problem and asked for help, and then found an organization that could help me. And I started to recover. And then when I started to recover, I started to um, get excited about completing projects and doing things that before I always seemed behind on. And in this book, I said, well, I want to write other books. And I said, well, you got to finish the one you started, and then you can start writing another book. So I said, okay, I'm going to finish this. And I dedicated myself to finishing it.
So
And it was inspired by an experience my brother had with an encounter. And so I just used that as an opportunity to jump in and get it done.
was this encounter in a tomato field?
Yeah, well, the name, the tomato fields, comes from an area where they used to dump sewage. And they used to dump sewage outside in the rural areas, and then it would grow and into vegetables and things because of the seeds in the
Mhm.
sewage. And uh, it was just a name we came up with, but it was he saw this Bigfoot in an area just north of that, and it's staring right at him. It was pretty scary. And when I heard him tell me that story, I said, "Geez, I've had this idea because I studied. I'm a historian, so I studied all the oral reports and all the book reports and everything that I've seen. I just studied it. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And but everything I saw that was written about it was nonfiction. And for me, someone told me a quote a while ago. It said, um, "Facts tell, but stories sell."
Yeah.
And I thought people need to hear stories. They need to hear uh, make a novel, a nonfiction that's based on reality, but it's all still fiction, and that will draw people into the characters um, and maybe be more enticing and get them more involved and more interested in the subject. I thought maybe fiction could do that. So that's what I wanted to do. And when he told me the story about his encounter, I said, well, I'm just going to go do it. And
Mm.
I just kind of I wrote it in the area where he lived and used that area. It's from Washington State where I grew up. So I was comfortable and I knew the area well. So I just took off and started writing and made up characters and made up stories. And
Well, that's the culmination of what happened to me, Tim. I wrote three, uh, you know, uh, fiction, uh, you know, books, and I wrote. Well, actually, the sci-fi is a fiction book. That's that book is my fourth book, and I that's a culmination of my real life stories and bias. Yeah. So that culminated in what my ideas were, and where you got your idea from your brother, and
plus, I had thousands of stories that I've read
yeah,
and studied. So it all of it just kind of came to me, and some of them I represented in the book, and some of them I made up, but it was made up based on things that other people said had happened. So it wasn't completely unrealistic. It just was, but it wasn't anything. It was fun because you could be creative and use your imagination and still stay in with some realistic bounds based on all the stories you've heard.
yeah. Now you haven't seen one yourself, right?
No, I, I have not. I'm not out there enough to
Mm.
to to that to happen unless it's by accident, and I just haven't accidentally seen one. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's a lot of activity, believe it or not, down here in Texas, and I know people who've gotten close, and I'm now that I'm going to be semi-retired, I might have more time to get out there and do some stuff, but. The sequel that I'm writing is going to be based in East Texas. So, um, and I'm in about 7 chapters into that.
Yeah.
So,
There's a lot of sightings in East Texas from what I
yeah, there's a
heard.
lot of crazy
Yeah.
stuff going on in East Texas. So,
Cryptids and Bigfoot, a lot of that stuff going on there. Texas is so huge that it's
a
got,
lot of,
it just has layers of different, I guess research items that you can get involved in. Uh,
yeah, there's a lot of interest. It's an interesting state. And I want to focus a little bit more on the paranormal aspect.
okay. Go
So
for it.
that's what I'm going to do in the sequel.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so I'm just developing that, and it's not easy to develop that in a way that it seems real to people. And so it's been a challenge, writing challenge, in addition to all the other challenges of trying to publish a book and mark, all that. It takes a lot of time.
Well, you mentioned something about we call things or happenings or events or experiences, we call them paranormal because we don't have any other name for them. And that's true.
Yeah.
We put it in the bag of paranormal,
But
cryptid.
sometimes that's done as woo woo, which I do not like.
Yeah,
Woo woo is just a way of belittling it.
right. It
It's
is.
not woo woo. It's just you don't understand it yet. So maybe you just have to accept there's things we don't understand and give some benefit of the doubt to things that maybe you don't agree with, but someone else might see as perfectly reasonable. And I'm seeing a lot of science come out now that explains these paranormal activities. So I think in the long run it'll make sense to us, but I don't think it's fair to call it woo woo because I
No,
think
yeah, yeah, it's that's belittling the subject. But yeah,
that
I've actually seen. I have never seen a Bigfoot. I know my cousin has, and he's a skeptic, but he saw one. But I've seen plenty of UFOs and ET experiences. But that's why I have people on the show, Tim. Uh,
yeah,
they come and tell their stories and their experiences. I don't really call them stories. If they're real, they're experiences. And then
yeah,
some people say, well, I'm not abductee. I'm a contactee because what happens with these these people that's been abducted, they're revisited. It's just
they
like
keep coming back.
they keep coming back. So you're a contactee, and that's real.
Uh-huh.
That's a good terminology for it. But with Bigfoot, I guess you don't see them all the time. You might, these researchers may see them one time or get close to them one time, and then they don't. Then they go for years without seeing any Bigfoot again. And do you think they're
Well, there's some.
dimensional?
There what?
Are they? Are they?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I think it's possible. I've heard some intriguing people talk about you have to be willing to be vulnerable to get them to come back.
Hmm.
And be vulnerable, that means you're not armed and you're in the area, in the dark, at night, on the low ground, giving them the high ground. Okay. And you're opening yourself up to being their lunch. Okay.
Oh, really?
And
Oh,
but that then they trust you enough to come closer to you.
right.
I don't know what to think of that because I personally don't think I would be secure enough to be in a situation like that without being armed.
That's the way I am too.
And if
But you
they,
think they can smell weapons? They can
yeah,
smell.
if they know, they know. Well, if they can read your thoughts, which
Yeah.
it's pretty likely that they have some kind of intuitive ability to do that because they're wild animals. We did at one point. We
Mm,
did it. We had
right.
the intuition. We could read people's thoughts because we needed to be able to do it. But now we're more, we have dependencies in other areas. But so if they can, they know that we have the capacity to defend ourselves, and they know that gunpowder can hurt them.
Yeah.
They've been harmed. And so I think they've just learned since we invented gunpowder, they became a scarce.
Hmm.
I think that there's probably some truth to that because Native Americans had a whole lot more experience with them than we're having with them
Oh,
today.
the Native Americans can teach us something, about
Well,
all.
yeah.
Yeah. Now the Bigfoot connection, you said there's a connection to UFOs. Now, have you studied that and researched that? You haven't seen it, but you have researched it, right, Tim?
Well, I think it's possible, yeah. And I think that it's possible that our human history is somehow connected to that. Um, we probably have had humans here for two or 300,000 years, or if not much longer. And in that event, we only know 6,000 years of that history, although more parts are starting to open up in ancient, we're starting to find sites that are much older than we ever thought humans were. So I think but for some reason, people don't want to go there. They don't want to think that we're older than 6,000 years, but it's probably been here a long time. and humans have probably been developed over that time, and it's very possible it was has an extraterrestrial link.
Right. And we've come and gone six or
And
seven.
we've maybe come and gone 6 or 7 times. The Earth has had cataclysms, and we'd have to rebuild
Right.
from them. Or they just said, "I'm out of here. I'll come back." Or they may still be here. There maybe alien presence is still here. We just don't know everything. And so I think there's a lot of possible options, and there could very well be
Yeah.
uh, a connection, an extraterrestrial connection, not only to them, the Bigfoot creatures, but to us too.
Yeah. The skeptics out there, I mean, with ETs and everything else, and our history is not what we think it is. It's all wrong. We're older than what you were talking about a while ago.
I think we are.
The
I mean,
pyramid, have you heard about the pyramid discovery about a mile?
yeah, I
Below?
stay on
Yeah.
top of that. But
Yeah.
there's pyramids off the coast of Japan. There's pyramids in the Great Lake.
Right.
There's also Stonehenge in the Great Lakes. This kind of stuff's been going on a long time.
Hmm.
And for us to think that it started in Mesopotamia 3,000 years ago, it's just not accurate, or 6,000 years ago. There's more to it than that. So that's all I think. And
Yeah.
I'm a Christian believer, but I just think sometimes we make it so narrow that nothing fits in it. And I just don't
Yeah.
think that's what it was meant to
Yeah.
happen.
I think the skeptics should pay attention to what's going on around them. It's just like Representative Luna, and I said this before on the show, and Comer, they got this committee, and they actually come out and said 2 or 3 weeks ago that they think that the whistleblowers who have been talking about ETs that they saw, the physical bodies, uh, Representative Luna, she said that they are interdimensional beings. And so they're admitting to UFOs and interdimensional beings. The government is, and I think people should listen up and what they're saying. And also the pyramids. This new finding with the pyramids is going to blow a lot of stuff out of the. It's
This all might be seeded. They might be seeding this knowledge to us now, to slowly, because they're going really slow about
right.
the letting people
Disclosure.
know. And I have a hard time trusting the same people who covered something up with suddenly being honest.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't quite know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, for whatever reason, things are starting to look like it's possible that weren't possible or considered possible years ago. And that's encouraging for whatever the reason.
So do your kids in school, do they talk about UFOs and extraterrestrials, Tim?
No, not too much. Not too much.
Yeah.
No, I occasionally it comes up in kind of a fun, lighthearted way, but I don't pursue it much. Some occasionally I have a teacher friend there that we like to talk about it,
Yeah.
and that's kind of fun. But it's just between colleagues. It's not, you
Yeah.
know.
I imagine teachers can't go teaching about UFOs and stories like that or Bigfoot because you'll have an enraged parent coming.
Well,
Oh, you know.
you shouldn't really. We should teach what we say we're
Right.
teaching.
Yeah.
So that's just being honest with parents. Um, but the kids are curious, so occasionally they have a question, and I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong by answering an honest question, and then leaving it there.
Yeah. There's a lot of things we got to protect our kids out there, and I know you're a teacher and you sound like a good one, and you're very, you know, very tedious about what you're saying and what you're teaching, because I guess not only will the parents be enraged like they are now, there's a lot of enraged parents at teachers meetings and school board meetings that they're mad about this and that that's coming up. And you're right. We should just teach the kids about school, about
Yeah, yeah.
arithmetic and writing and that type of thing, Tim, like you said.
It's hard enough to do that.
Right.
So, but yeah, you got to try to be consistent and ethical. So, anyway, that's how I kind of look at it. So I treat it on a fun level. And then if anybody wants to talk, some of them have gotten in touch with me on Instagram or something, because I have a Instagram page for my book, and some of them have sent me funny pictures, and we just jab back and forth. But usually it's fun lighthearted.
Right. We talk about Bigfoot and the paranormal. You link those together, and you said you didn't like that word paranormal. Could you could you tell us why you would like to separate that? Because paranormal sounds like a big sack and
Well,
yeah.
the reason I don't like it is what other people have done with it. There's nothing wrong with the word paranormal. It just means beyond normal.
Hmm.
Well, most of the knowledge we have today was beyond normal 100 years ago.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with beyond normal. It just means we don't understand it yet. It's not normal to us yet. But when you use the term woo woo, I think you're starting to belittle it at that point and say there's something fantasical about it, or non-real about it, where people are making things up, and I don't think that's true. I think these experiences people are having are real experiences. They might not understand them, and they might not be able to explain exactly what they meant or what happened, but to say that those experiences are less real than someone who found a hair sample, I just think that's silly.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of really strange things happening out there that people are really experiencing, and we can't really understand it if we discount that and call it woo woo. So, and I know a lot of people use that term that don't mean it belittling, but it is at its core a belittling way to say it, I think.
Right. And
So that part bothers me.
yeah.
However, um, I still think I don't have a problem with the term paranormal if it's used properly.
I think you mentioned here on cover-ups, and we talked about that. You said you don't trust people who's been covering up things for the last several hundred years, probably, and probably longer throughout
Hmm.
our history. And how could we trust them now? That's true. What do you think it's going to take for the public to really trust the government when they come out and talk about it? Is it going to have to be a a, a, a UFO that lands on the White House lawn and the president comes out and meets these aliens? Is that going to be the final truth,
Well,
you
I
think?
think there needs to be an apology. I think our government needs to apologize. They've been calling me crazy for 50 years. And now suddenly they're going to come, oh, we just didn't know. Look what's been happening. No, I think someone needs to take accountability for this, for covering this up for so many years. And that's what I'd like to see. That's when I'll know there's honesty. Because this hasn't been right. You don't do this to people.
Hmm.
That's my opinion.
Well,
That,
I just saw some internet films, some videos of some guys talking about the drones, and they brought it back up, and they're saying that they're finding out through some of these experts that even the experts in the military that are kind of talking off to the side, they're kind of whispering. They're telling people, and this guy said he knows a friend that he was told that these things just they weren't just drones. He said they were drones from maybe some other planet, but they weren't our drones. We had some drones in the air that's flying, and they're still seeing every once in a while, like in Texas. I saw where they've seen and they filmed UFOs and things of this nature, and the government's still not coming forth. They're
no,
saying,
they're not. And I generally like what Trump does, but I don't think he's being completely honest about this either.
I was upset about what he said. He
I
said
don't
the
think
same
he
thing Biden
handled,
did.
yeah, and they blame Biden. Yeah, that's whatever. Biden didn't wasn't honest about it either. I
Yeah.
think it's taken lightly, and oh, it's not that big a deal. It was just a bunch of drones. I'm sorry, that was not what
Yeah.
was going on, and they don't just start suddenly and then just stop suddenly. What? Come on. And so
They're still
it's
flying around, but not as many.
yeah, and why? I don't know. I've heard now this new jet they just came out with that they just said they were pumping up how good it was going to be.
Yeah.
They say that uses drones. It works in conjunction with drones. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of the things Trump said. This new jet works in conjunction with drones. It's not just the jet.
Right. But
Well,
also,
maybe they were testing it.
yeah, you heard Biden and Trump say the FAA approved these drones flying around New York and New Jersey.
Yeah,
How,
well,
how can you approve things that are scaring people to death?
or that don't you don't know what they are.
Yeah.
How do you improve something you don't know what it is?
Yeah.
That's silly. And then deal with the Chinese balloons. It might have been Chinese balloons. I still don't know what that whole thing was. I got to the point where I stopped believing anything
Yeah.
that I saw because of I certainly didn't believe anything the government said.
Yeah.
So,
Louis Olivandro and also Dr. Greer, these people are supposed to have, disclosure coming out, and they've been promising disclosure for the last 2 months, but I haven't heard anything, in a final note or show in which Dr. Greer was supposed to have with a lot of whistleblowers. I heard the whistleblowers were told, no, you do it. We're gonna cut your pension off. We're gonna cut your pay off. So they have ways of stopping these whistleblowers without using force. They can, they can just cut their money off.
well, whenever they say, yeah, but whenever they say, I'm not able to answer that question,
Hmm.
these witnesses are say, I can't go there.
Right.
I, well, once they tell me that, I don't believe them anymore. Why can't you go there? The fact that you can't go there means that it's being covered up.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I,
So
I
you're telling me the truth, but you can't tell me the truth.
yeah. Uh,
That to me, that's suspect. I can't buy it anymore. I don't know if he's telling the truth or not, but I just don't read too much into it.
yeah.
And Luna too. Luna and the congressman. You're a congressman. Tell us you can tell us anything. Tell us.
Mhm.
And they can't even. So what's that mean?
Yeah, and that committee's been they've been working for the last couple of months, and the only thing they come up with was there was two shooters in the John F. Kennedy assassination, two
Well,
shooters. We knew,
yeah.
we knew that. I mean, I kind of knew that, but they're coming out and telling us little bits and pieces to make their committee look like it's doing something, but it's not doing that much.
Well, I think it could do a lot more. That's what I think. And
Right.
I think I want to hear them say, yes, that's true. Yes, this is what happened. I don't have to cover up anything. Nothing is confidential. I can tell you exactly what's happening. I want to hear that.
Yeah. I can just imagine, a couple of men dressed in black walking into those skiffs, those top secret rooms, and then telling them, uh, stop what you're talking about. Do not talk about this to the public. And then they walk out the door. I'm fantasizing now. I guess I'm back into sci-fi again, but I think maybe that is happening. There's people telling them they can't say it. They can't.
Well, yeah. The one I worry about is that we are just a petri dish, and they don't want us to find out.
Yeah.
And what I mean by they're taking samples, they are taking people, they are disappearing. We don't know why they're disappearing.
Mhm.
And if we are really just to get specimens to test their biological whatever, I don't know what their reasons would be, but if that's happening and there really is something to be scared of and the government really isn't in control, other things are in control, and they just make it look like it's in control and at some levels so we aren't afraid. I wonder sometimes if that might be behind the whole thing.
Well, I think there's always been a shadow government, and the politicians are just puppets, and they're told what to say and what not to say. Now you talk about you mentioned here about spirituality,
Yeah.
mindfulness,
Yep.
and let's see, addiction recovery. Could you talk a little bit about that? That's one of your topics you wanted to talk about. Let's get
Well, I just bring that up. Sometimes I talk about on podcasts about that particularly.
okay.
So the one of the things that really in any kind of addiction at the core level is really a spiritual disease, in the sense that you're attempting to alcohol is really the cure.
Yeah.
It's not the disease. The alcoholism is the disease, but the alcohol itself, because it gives you, even though only temporary, just a sense of ease and peace and connection with something bigger than yourself, even if it's for a short time and then later results in tragic consequences. At that moment, you sense a feeling, a connection to something bigger than yourself. So, to be able to be cured from that, you have to get some kind of connection to something bigger than yourself and something that's spiritual. and transcendent. And so I've had to learn to be able to connect inside with that who I my higher power, which I see as God, and connect and get my enoughness, get what makes me valuable and real and worthy and my identity through Him. And that has been my road toward mindfulness.
Hmm.
And um, and there's some practical things I can do that encourage mindfulness and connection, and there's some things I can do that discourage it. And
Yeah.
so part of recovery is learning how to focus on the things that encourage it. And one of those is letting go of things you can't control, and learning how to be grateful and forgiving people more easily and not holding grudges, and trying to serve others and not always wanting others to serve you. Those are just practical things we can do. And not being too judgmental. We can be real judgmental, and once we start putting other people down or blaming other people too much for their failings in life, then we start having fingers pointing back at us, and it causes us to clamp up and not be able to experience God's presence. So that's kind of how I'm learning to live life.
Yeah. I say a prayer myself to God, the source, the creator, and that is the main
Mhm.
source of everything, energy, spirituality, and we are part of that energy and deep within us.
Yeah,
And just like with
I
the
agree.
that's what the ETs, they mess with us biologically, but they can't mess with our souls, our
I think
spirit.
that's true. I think you're right on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
They
I think ultimately that's the power of the universe.
yeah.
But we're in a somehow, I think it's a redemptive process of figuring it all out. And so that's kind of where, but mindfulness is really being at peace and rest and being able to focus on the now and not get distracted with all of the things around us, the future and the past, because we chase the future or we run from the past. And the whole idea of real recovery, spiritual recovery, is that we live in the present and we accept the things the way they are, and we try to fix the things we can, and the other things we just, that's the way it is, and we don't, get too upset about it. And that helps you live at peace and connect with that energy that you mentioned inside, that everybody is part of.
I when I get to worrying about things and I see the world the way it is, I've been in combat and I can just see with like Russia and Ukraine just killing each other. And I think Trump's
Oh,
right
it's
on that.
brutal.
It's
It's
brutal.
brutal.
And
It's just
yeah,
it's a crime what was done there.
right. And I think Trump is right wanting to stop the
Right.
killing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Let's stop the killing and let's get a consciousness and a spirituality around this world, this
I
globe.
agree.
and
I
and and we are fussing about little political problems and crazy little problems that doesn't amount to nothing. And like you said, we should forgive, be kind, and get along and have patience with other people.
right.
I'm older and I've lost some of my patience as you get older, and you're not at that stage yet, but you do kind of lose patience. But I have to be careful of myself and think, okay, and that's why I get along with people from the both sides of the aisle. I try
Yeah.
I try to until they get violent, then I have to just back away. But this is crazy. A lot of people are stressed out. You see them on the internet talking
Oh,
about they can't sleep or they're stressed out. And what you're talking about, the spirituality and consciousness, Tim, it worked for you. Maybe you can advise people what they can do to get rid of that stress.
that's right. That's what I try to do. That's what I try to do with my life. And the way to do it is to we have to look. We have to already know we have it. We have whatever it is we think we need to have. Most of the things we're chasing won't make us happy anyway, if we're not already happy when we get there.
Mhm.
And so the key is to we are enough if we just relax and look to that power that's beyond us and say, and then just do that on a daily basis and trust in that, and not always looking at something out there. It's like if we manage this outside here, everything will be good. Then we'll have everything together. Or if we get this, or we make that profit, or we buy that house, or we have that girlfriend, or we're always chasing these things that won't make us happy
No,
if we're not already happy when we get there. So by letting go of that demand to get something external and then looking inside our hearts where we all know it's there, we know what's there, and then just trusting that we're enough already and letting God just commune with us, just commune. Then we're going to be have that peace. I think that's where it comes from.
right.
Some people might think I'm being a religious fanatic, but
No,
I
you're not religious. That doesn't sound. I have people on the show that talk about consciousness and
yeah,
spirituality, and they don't get into religion. Uh,
I can bring scripture in and I can show where it's saying that,
yeah.
but I don't. It doesn't necessarily. Sometimes it's been misused so much. I'm just careful not to do that. I could say the same thing.
Hmm. But yeah, I can see the stress in this world, and I'm older, and I've been through quite a few decades here, but I've never seen it like this. I've never seen people being pitted against each other, a race, religion, ideology, politics. It's everything that's just thrown. It's like Europe and everywhere else. They all have this problem with trying to get along with with each other and to different races. And immigration has went wild.
I think it's just there's a globalist kind of tyrannous type of thing that's trying to grip the world.
Yes, it
The
is.
world is, I think, rejecting it, and slowly, I think we're coming to some realities about our responsibility in making this planet work and making these nations come out of this. And I think maybe I'm starting to feel like for a while I thought we were doomed.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to feel like people are waking up and maybe we're going to be able to turn this thing around. And but there's a tyrannous there's a there's some people out there that just want power.
Yeah.
And
And they're making people angry and upset to help them maintain power, and they're using them as pawns, you
I
know.
agree with that.
Yeah, and
I
I
agree with
I
that.
see that the powerful people are talking. It's a propaganda. That's where it all comes from, and it's just that
It's
powerful
propaganda.
people are guilty. They're actually, some of these powerful people are guilty and are afraid, and now they're forcing their subordinates or their people of their party to go out and cause all this havoc and trouble. And both sides have it. I mean, both sides, political aisles have it. I don't even like mentioning parties because that's political. But we need to kind of come to common sense and say stop
Um,
crap, and we can work things out more by discussing things.
well, and we also have to expose it. There's some corrupt people in our government, and they don't like people finding out.
Yeah,
But we have to find out. We have to make that expose that and show that. And they're on both sides of the aisle.
yeah,
Telling you, there's some criminals on both sides of that
yes,
aisle,
yes.
and
Yeah,
they need to come to get honest about that. There need to be some honesty on that. I think it's happening slowly.
yeah. I think a few people are going
And
to be there's going to have to be a few people that are going to have to pay the price to be an example to our society,
yeah,
that this stuff doesn't belong in our society, this corruption. You mentioned here also religion and the quantum physics. Did you get into quantum physics? That's very,
yeah, I did.
very
I've
powerful.
studied that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've studied that a lot. I the the theories about um, things collapsing into reality when when they're observed, the observation theory, and the entanglement of particles billions of miles away, and they're violating the speed of light. Um, and all of that is very mysterious. Portals, things. I think they're all things that are starting to demonstrate some of these paranormal, so to speak, things are actually more scientific than you think. And So I love the study of quantum physics because it has so much connection to spirituality that people have always seen as spiritual or religious. In reality, there's a physical science behind it. And I like that. I like thinking that we're all connected, that
Right.
all reality is connected,
Yes.
and that what we do affects what Joe's doing down the, in some way that we produce energy that either helps the world around us or hinders it. And all of us are guilty of both. But why not be guilty of the better one most more of the time?
Yeah,
you know? And so I think that energy, I like to think of reality as energy,
it is frequency and energy. I
frequency and energy.
I saw these experiments that they've done. They just I just did another one here a while back about putting a DNA of a person in a petri dish and then taking that DNA about 1,000 miles away or further and then
Hmm.
putting it in a location and then doing something to affect the DNA in one location. And they said that that effect travels to that other DNA and it responds to whatever is happening with the
Yeah.
original DNA. Did you
But
hear about that, Tim?
yeah, I have, and I've also seen that with entanglement.
That's
The point
entanglement. Yes.
the point thing there is that we see it as travel because we see it as 2 points.
Hmm.
But if light is just everywhere and everything's part of light, it's not traveling, it's just existing in another point,
Right.
just like it existing at this point. And somehow everything's connected in light, and that light isn't limited by distance in space. All time is distance in space. Ultimately, that's all. And we've made it chronological, and we've taken 24 hours of the sun going around the Earth, or the Earth going around the sun, and we've turned it into a day, which then we've added more days and made a time out of it, chronological time out of it. But it's basically the movement of planets and movement of objects in space. And the lower, further away you get from the objects, the slower or the faster or the slower, I can't remember, but time speeds up and slows down, and all kinds of strange things happen with light. And so it's fascinating, but we're not even close to understanding it.
Right. Maybe that's what Representative Luna, going back to this drone thing uh,
Could be.
that happened, she said that they're interdimensional. And these plasmoids that they saw in the sky and they took video of them, and also
Hmm.
the orbs that are flying around,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
coming from another dimensional
There's some
plane.
of that in East Texas too.
Yes. Yeah. The,
I I'm going to talk about that in my book because the orbs are, they find there's a lot of orbs that they see around these things.
Mhm.
And around UFOs too, and Bigfoot. There's just weird stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of quantum entanglement, that's big time
Yeah, it
quantum
could be.
entanglement.
It
Yeah.
could be. Yeah,
Uh, I just think that, that everything that's been said about all this is withholding everything from us. And we knew the truth. And if we knew that we were probably a matrix, a lot of people are saying we're a matrix, we're holographic, we're
could
experiencing
be.
things. Yeah.
Could be.
Everything's frequency, and your desk in front of you is not solid. It's what you perceive it to be
It's
because
dense. Well, there's some density to it,
yeah,
but it's dense and it's a denser form of energy, but it's still energy.
right.
Um, and anyway, I don't completely understand it, but I think it's fascinating. So
I think quantum entanglement and these plasmoids and these orbs that fly around that
yeah,
come into our dimension through a portal, that it
yeah,
could
could
be a
be,
portal.
could be.
Yeah. So
There's the James Webb Telescope is seeing things further and further away now. It's
yes.
getting amazing. And now I was listening to a science show, and they said that they're finding galaxies that move the opposite, that rotate the opposite way of most galaxies, and that it somehow they didn't think that would ever happen. And I'm a novice when I go into the science, so I'm always telling you what I thought I heard someone else say. And then they said something interesting, that they're conjecture now that the whole universe could be a black hole, that we could be a black hole in some form of a black hole, which I don't completely understand, but I just think it's amazing that this massive, expansive universe could be part of even a bigger, something even bigger. And there's so much miraculous stuff going on that it's just so beyond us, and it's so magnificent. And We should be excited about that.
Yeah. Life is a mystery, and I keep wondering. We say extraterrestrials are about they're several million years ahead of us in technology, but do they really know life's mystery? You know, the creator, the source.
We don't know.
They probably don't know either. You
And
know,
they might, we don't know what they are.
yeah,
So it's hard to say.
yeah. Well,
And extraterrestrial, just if we're from a different solar system, then we're extraterrestrial to them.
yes, we are. We are TETs here on Earth. Yeah, I believe that. Now you mentioned here we get into this near death experience. And have you ever had one of those, Tim?
No, I have not. But when I had the experience with recovery, I was listening to as much information as possible to explain what had happened to me because I had a real spiritual experience and I was just changed. And then I started developing and understanding what the disease was and what the recovery was, and I started having additional experiences of being connected where you just feel like you're one with something, the universe. It now I can almost bring it on, but back then it would just happen once in a while and I'd go, wow, what was that?
Yeah.
But I gradually started coming to grips with some of these spiritual aspects, and then I was listening on my car podcast, and this thing came up about a near death experience, and I started listening to it, and then I realized that I didn't die uh, and come back to life, but the after effects that I was experiencing were the same experiences, or many of the same, that these people who died and came back
Mhm.
were experiencing. I'm feeling, well, that's interesting. They're having the same after effects. So I started studying as much as possible, and they kind of became fascinated by it. And it is very interesting. And it kind of, a lot of the stories and the experiences people have in those near death experiences reflect some of the things we're talking about, the energy in the universe and spirituality. And so I just can't get in. I like those almost as much as Bigfoot stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
We've
but
covered a
they're
few.
really, it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. We covered a few topics, but I think people know what we're trying to talk about. But I, I look at this thing about, the near death experience, and they talk about they're they're saying that if you go towards the light when you die, that you're going to be
Mhm.
reincarnated. But if you go to the left or right to the darkness, you'll end up in a light, but you'll be going back to the source. You'll be going back to the creator. I'm not
I
sure
don't,
how true that is, but that's what's been going around in these near death experience investigations.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everything I hear, I take a little bit with a grain of salt
Yeah.
because some of the stuff I don't get. And so, but some of it seems to correspond with other parts of it and seems to be similar. And then it conforms to something that I've experienced in my own life. So I just try to take it like that. I just hope that in that moment I'll know what to do,
I
and
know
I
we're
can trust the
yeah,
same God I'm trusting now to
right,
for
right.
for connection now will give me connection then.
And I think there's a lot of ears that listen to what we know and where we're at. If you notice my screen, I had a couple of listeners that watched the show, and they mentioned on my screen I have a glitch that comes up from the bottom right of the screen, and it glitches halfway up and it goes back. It's done it about 4 or 5 times during this show. I don't know what it is. I don't know if
Okay,
something's messing with the picture or the video, but I'm sure that they're always
the
watching.
government's mad at me.
They're
there's
watching. They're
there's a
watching us.
surprise. The government's upset.
Yeah.
So
But no, this is all so interesting. We can spend a lot of time talking about near death experiences. I know my brother, when he passed away in 2016, he come back to his son, who's actually his stepson, and his stepson said he had this lucid dream, and
yeah,
my brother told him, he said heaven is not what you think it is. He said this is not what you think or what you've been told that where you're going. So
yeah.
it must be dimensional platforms that you go to or whatever.
Well,
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Have you ever heard the story of Paul when the apostle, when he was stoned to death and he died, and then they prayed for him and he came back to life? And he may very well have had a near death experience because he describes it in other parts of the Bible about going to a third heaven and seeing things people weren't meant to see.
Mhm.
And I think he had a near death experience.
Yeah.
And and they don't talk about it in that framework, but I think it's likely it happened. And he saw things that we're just not meant to see and don't understand. And I just think there's a lot more that's going to amaze us.
Right. We're here. We're here to learn, I guess, in this body, in this flesh body. We're here to learn, and we don't experience love or our kindness until we experience pain and sorrow, because we have to know the difference between the two. And we all like kindness and happiness, but we don't like the pain and sorrow part of it. But that's what's in our lives. And if you look at it, it's like,
We learn.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's 50-50. Actually. You look at our lives, that's how we live, and that's what we're learning. It's a life lesson in this body. And then we go on to another dimension or whatever. Is that what you're thinking about, Tim?
I think that there is. I think that all of the universe is being redeemed in a gradual process. And at some point, it's going to come and it's just going to be the way it was always meant to be before all the chaos took place and all the. And I think that's the redemption that's
Yeah.
discussed in Scripture, although it's not understood as well as people think it is. Okay.
Your phone dropped down. There you go.
It's
There you go.
very mysterious. It's more mysterious than people want to admit in some religious circles. But I think that God redeemed us. He is redeeming us and he's going to redeem us. It's a continual process that's working out. And it's not just us, it's the entire universe that it fell into the chaos that we have to live through now. And part of that is for learning lessons. And I think part of that is for overcoming uh, as a as a race, as a human race,
Yeah.
or as a living energetic race, whatever you define that as,
Right.
toward an end that's beautiful and perfect.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that's happening. So we're at some stage of it, and which one I have no idea.
Right. We're born, we live or we thrive. We have a choice. We can live and thrive during our life, and then we die because we all have to die, and we all have to have some way of dying. That's what I tell people. When we get older, we have all these problems, and we die, and we suffer some. Hopefully not too much. And I hear a lot of people's stories that saddens me. I'm kind of an empath. I kind of suck it all in, and it's kind of painful. Tim, could you tell us a little bit about where we can hear about you? You said a podcast. You mentioned podcast or whatever.
I just do other people. I go on other people's podcasts.
Okay,
So
right.
if you want to, you can email me. I have, you can use the email that I gave you.
Okay,
If
all
you
right.
want to put that in the show notes,
Okay,
and people are welcome to email me. I also have a Instagram. I think it's tomato.fields at Instagram. And I do a lot of Bigfoot stuff on there, here and there.
okay,
And people are welcome. And I do Facebook too. And
yeah.
um,
Well, that's how I found you is on Facebook.
yeah, if you look up Tim Moon on Facebook and Bigfoot and a couple other things, it'll come up. But if you just put tomato fields, Tim Moon on a on a on a Google search or an Amazon search, the book comes right up.
Okay, yes,
Just so you know it, if you're listening, I am making some minor edits and redoing the cover. So if you want to wait for about a month, I'll have all the latest stuff up there,
okay,
and then you can get the best version. But um, if that doesn't bother you, it's available.
okay. Well, the hour went by really fast as usual, and we've been listening here to Tim Moon. He's been the guest, and we've been talking about various topics and subjects that we normally talk about here on the Strange Reality. And this is Dave Emmons and the Strange Reality signing off, and thanking everybody for listening in and viewing us, and the Facebook
Thank you, Dave.
who follow us around pretty well. I want to thank you so much for that. And this is Tim Moon and Dave Emmons, the Strange Reality, signing off. Good night, everybody, or good evening.